Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about the forgotten ideals of federalism, or the possible forgotten ideals of federalism. And we'll try to make a case for it, and I will try to show some references on it, and try to confirm the point. We're going to be looking at a couple federations, or two federations, and both, North American, Canada, and the U.S. But this is going to be mostly focused on Canada because that's what I'm more familiar with. But it applies to USA too, it easily applies to USA as well. But we're going to be talking about, what a federalism should actually entail, how there should be like some sort of a competition between jurisdictions in a country, you know, and people would migrate to where the conditions, how much they pay in taxes and how much they receive in public goods, some sort of a competition between provinces or states. That's what federalism was supposed to be, was supposed to facilitate that competition. But what ended up happening is the federal leviathan just kept expanding. So this is one example of a federation, right? The U.S., 50 states, Canada, right? And now we're going to be looking at what the problem is, or what the part of the problem is, at least. You see, citizens of Canada, uh, not about taxes overall, but particularly, or significantly, when it comes to income tax and corporate income tax, I mean, most of their income is sent to Ottawa rather than whatever their province's capital is, right? Winnipeg or Halifax or Regina, right? So you can see from this that income tax rate, right? So when business owners or CEOs when they're trying to assess, uh, you know, who's going to be taking more of their deductions and taxes, it's going to be the federal government. You see, 15%. So you would add 15% on top of everything else, but you'd be paying, you'd be sending most of it to Ottawa. That's the point. And then the same with income tax, personal income tax, marginal rates. You see that this is the case if you make over 200K a year, right? I mean, you're paying 33% to the federal government, no matter where you are on the map, right? No matter where you are in the country. So, I mean, Nova Scotia, 21%. So imagine paying that together, 21 plus 33, right? Oh, look at New Brunswick, $20. I mean, 20% and 33%. I mean, that's a high rate. You wouldn't want to live in New Brunswick if you made more than 200K. Now, so the income taxes in particular make up the majority, or half, I should say, of the portion that the government makes in its revenue. Right? It makes up half of it, as you can see in this pie chart. Right? The corporate income tax altogether only make up 15%, and then there are various other taxes that are, I guess that comes through with payroll tax, perhaps sales tax. Yet on an annual basis, the country still suffers from chronic budget deficits. And I mean, look, even at times like now, sometimes they're matching the spending that was done in the 40s and the 30s during the Great War and the World War II, right? But sometimes they're likely to exceed it as well, as they have done most recently. So and you can see this has been the case for the majority of the country's history. I mean, there was like about a decade I guess mid 90s to 2005, 2004, when they actually experienced a budget surplus. But that was a contrary trend. Yeah, you see, and it says 2016 onwards is forecast, but I mean the results are worse than the forecast. So the budget deficits were larger than what's forecasted here. So another thing that what's it called? The federation was supposed to facilitate, other than being competition between jurisdictions, is what's important is how the citizens migrate between the various provinces or states, right? You try to see, which provinces, states they don't like, and based on what conditions or reasons, and the ones they do like, and the ones they do prefer, right? I mean, you can see this on an international scale or even on a national scale, right? It's called voting with their feet. You know, when people, when citizens seem to have a tendency or preference towards moving to these jurisdictions, then one should wonder what are the particular characteristics or the conditions in those jurisdictions that make it appealing for them to move there, and then the provinces or the states that they're emigrating from are encouraged to to redirect in their course, and perhaps imitate what's preferred. So it's the citizens are basically equated as consumers in a free market. Whatever consumers prefer, that's what that's what the market intends to provide. All right, so you can see the migration patterns even on an international scale. As I said, you can see people are coming up from South America and Central America. People are going from Africa to Europe. They're coming from India to Persia to Turkey, and then to the Balkans, I guess, right? And some people are going southeast to Indonesia and Australia, perhaps. And then you can even see this. Um, what was I? Just a second. And map of Canada. Yeah. So if this principle, if this forgotten ideal of federalism was um, was set back in the system again, what would occur is, unlike now, where taxpayers send majority of their money to Ottawa instead of their provincial capital, that should be reversed, right? So if you're a resident in Alberta, most of your tax dollars should be spent or should be sent to the government in Edmonton, to the legislature in Edmonton, rather than Parliament in Ottawa, right? So that should make up the majority. And then let's see how other provinces do, right? And let's say I'm a resident in Fredericton, right? And I got Fredericton. The economic conditions are such, and I feel like I gotta get out of here because apparently in Moose Jaw they're offering different conditions, and if I move there, I can open up my business, and I you know it will just be a different sort of financial economic conditions that perhaps may incentivize me to move there. But that's not the case, right? And what impedes that competition between provinces is the federal government being too big and basically hindering or obstructing that competition between jurisdictions to go on and play its and play out, I should say, right? So what ends up happening is no matter where the citizens move in the country, it doesn't make a huge difference on what their financial conditions will be. I mean, for example, Alberta, by everybody only having to pay 15% provincial income tax, I mean, that made them one of the most uh, tax appealing subdivisions, not just in Canada, but in entire North America, right? It was like top five. Alberta wasn't like top five, along with Texas and a few other places, Florida. But then the NDP government came in, and then they imposed the provincial progressive uh, income tax, right, and the $15 minimum wage and stuff like that. So I mean, Alberta's now somewhat mediocre compared to what it was previously, right? But I mean, it's just a slight alteration, and it causes this much destruction, right? But in this case, right, it will be the reverse, and then you would see which provinces would Canadians prefer to move to, right? So I mean, this is for me something more significant than what the election results would tell us, right? Now this is this here's something I found for Canada, a similar map. Uh, I guess this is set on 2 decades, so I guess it takes time to take a record of these migration patterns, right? Or take a notice of these migration patterns. But the thing is, that's because the federal government is too large, Perhaps those migration patterns alone would be enough. You wouldn't even need elections. So, anyways, as you can see, that most of the provinces here have a negative percentage, right? So that means, for example, in Manitoba, um, when you compare um, the people who moved to Manitoba, you subtract from the people who moved out. It's a negative. So the net amount is negative. So the more people have moved out of Manitoba than have moved in, right? On that 2 decades data, right? And that's the case with most of the places, right? Let's say Newfoundland, that's 7.8%. More people moving out than moving in. The only places that are positive is BC, 1.89%, and also Alberta, 9.86%, right? Now, so Canada is not in a, its projection is not so bright. Now here's the ease of doing business index, and Canada has ranked the lowest ever had in its history, right? At least in the history of its participation in these rankings. And as you can see, it's the 23rd position in the latest rankings. 23rd. And this is Canada's lowest position in its history, you see. I mean, if you go back far enough, they were in the 7th. They were top 10. They were top 10 for a while. And then they just kept declining and declining. 23. I mean, next year, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be 25 or lower. Maybe lower. Maybe in the 30s. Or, yeah. I mean, look, Kazakhstan is 25. Russia's 28. Japan is 29. China's 31. Turkey's 33. France 32. Wow. But I mean, if you look up, Macedonia's 17. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Estonia's 18. I mean, former Soviet, former commie places. They're doing good. Finland 20. Thailand 21. Wow, Thailand is doing better than Canada. Now here's a island off the coast of Africa, Mauritius. Yeah, they're doing good too. Malaysia 12. Wow. United Arab Emirates 16. Taiwan 15. Anyway, yeah. Now there was a book I read earlier this year, and so this man Frank Chodorov, basically presented this exact argument, So I wanted to read this excerpt for you. The only way to prevent the monopoly of power from becoming absolute is to create a competitive market for government, to give the customers, the citizens, a choice of jurisdiction. That is exactly what the peculiar American system of divided authority between the states and federal government had accomplished. In this way, it was hoped the polarization of power that undermines freedom would be prevented. The central government was given certain specific chores to do, and everything else was left to the states. 10th Amendment. If though the states themselves were ever to get rough with its customers, citizens, they could easily transfer their allegiance to another state. At times, states would devise and impose various political schemes, even somewhat socialistic at times, but they never did get far with these schemes, simply because the citizen could march off to a state more of his liking, while immigration into the state from other states would simultaneously be discouraged. And since no government likes to lose taxpayers, the state would end up having to change their course. This is from chapter 9 if you guys want to check it out. It's free online provided by the Mises Institute. If you guys want to check it out. So we gotta wonder what that could tell us. Oh, I think something didn't work. Just a second. I just hit play and it starts recording. So no edit, not much editing going into this stuff, and I just get it ready for upload. I mean, I guess this is gonna be uploaded later in the month, but I mean, I've assigned this shit as like homework for myself. But to tie off what we were saying about federations and about the decline of Canada economically, several years ago, I was really opposed to monarchies. I used to say, monarchy is just anachronistic. It's just outdated. Why are there such things, man? Monarchy, right? But then, you come across an idea like um, Monaco or Andorra, right? And you just wonder how that could play out in Canada's case, right? Like, imagine how much significance uh, the royal family in Buckingham Palace has on our lives as citizens of Canada. Not much, correct? Not much at all. But imagine if we could just diminish the significance of the state to that extent. You know, there would just be an army, an RCMP, Supreme Court perhaps, but that's it. You don't need that clown show in Ottawa. I mean, ever watch one of those question periods? You could rip your hairs up. I mean, it's just, I mean, you're not impressed with democracy when you see that. It's just disappointing. Yeah. So I think if the size of the state could be diminished just to the monarchy as it is right now, and the federal income tax could be reduced to like maybe 3%, 3% would be enough. That would be enough to serve those necessary functions, as I said. But also, if the rest of the money, the royal family wants to take it and spend it however they want, buy their mansions and buy their Rolls Royce and buy their whatever, right? But we would still have a balanced budget, we'd still have a balanced budget. Unlike now, where with the clown show and a huge bureaucratic machine behind it, it's just uh, uh, wasting the purse, incessantly. That's what it is. Alright guys, hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hope you learned something. see you in the next one. Like, share, subscribe.